Most women think a man's fear of commitment is rooted in immaturity, avoidance, or ego, but that's only the surface. Beneath that polished armor of logic and restraint lies something far more ancient, the terror of the union that demands his complete psychological death, the kind of union Jung called the sacred marriage, the merging of opposites, where a man must face the woman who mirrors everything he has repressed, the shadow bride. She is not the one who flatters his light, she awakens his darkness. She is not there to soothe him, but to expose him. When she arrives, his intellect trembles, because her presence doesn't appeal to his mind, but to the deepest fractures of his soul. She carries the scent of mystery, the energy of chaos, and the quiet authority of one who has walked through her own shadows and survived. To the uninitiated man, she feels like danger. To the awakened man, she feels like destiny. Because deep down, every man senses that his wholeness depends on meeting her, not the woman who pleases him, but the one who undoes him. In Jungian terms, she is the embodiment of his anima, the feminine aspect of his unconscious that he has spent a lifetime ignoring. She speaks the language of his dreams. She shows up in symbols, in fantasies, in the flicker of attraction that feels almost unbearable. And when she appears in flesh and blood, he cannot categorize her. She doesn't fit his ideals. She breaks them. She is the mirror that reflects not who he pretends to be, but who he truly is beneath the performance. If you've ever wondered why some men love deeply but then sabotage what feels too real, this is why. The moment a woman embodies his shadow bride energy, he stands at a psychological threshold. To love her is to confront himself. Her eyes become a portal to the parts of him he spent years escaping. His vulnerability, his guilt, his suppressed tenderness, his rage. And so, instinctively, he resists. He rationalizes, withdraws, or even vilifies her, because she demands not compliance but transformation. And yet, he cannot forget her. No matter how far he runs, her image lingers. Because she represents his unlived life, the dimension of soul he exiled in the pursuit of control. She is the emotional initiation he never received. In the presence of such a woman, his ego collapses, and his authentic self longs to emerge, naked, trembling, and real. But here lies the paradox. She cannot save him, and she must not try. Her role is not to mother his wounds, but to remain rooted in her own power. The shadow bride is not born from the desire to be chosen. She is born from the fire of self-recognition. She has descended into her own underworld, faced her shame, integrated her rage, and now radiates a presence that demands truth. Her love is not soft indulgence. It is sacred confrontation. When a woman reaches this stage of consciousness, her energy changes everything around her. Men feel it immediately. Some are drawn, others are terrified. Because she doesn't play by the old feminine script. She doesn't seduce with approval or submission. She seduces through presence, through the quiet magnetism of a woman who no longer needs permission to exist. And that, in itself, is revolutionary. Because in a culture that teaches women to please and men to dominate, the shadow bride disrupts both illusions. She stands at the crossroads of the masculine and the feminine, and reminds both of what love truly means, the willingness to be undone. For the man, meeting her is both a death and a resurrection. For the woman, becoming her is the moment she stops begging for recognition and starts embodying divinity. She no longer wants the fairy tale. She wants the truth. She knows that to awaken a man is not to comfort his ego, but to awaken his soul. And that requires courage, patience, and detachment. But you, who hears these words, you know this story already, don't you? You felt it. You've been the one who loved a man not for who he was, but for who he could become if he faced himself. You've seen the flicker of awakening in his eyes, and then the retreat. You've learned that your power isn't in chasing him into his shadow, but in standing still while he wrestles with it. Because the shadow bride doesn't chase. She waits, not out of weakness but out of wisdom. She understands that a man must choose to cross the threshold himself. Her silence becomes the echo that haunts him until he's ready to meet her on equal ground. Not as a boy craving safety, but as a man capable of depth. And so she remains, both muse and mirror, both invitation and challenge. She loves without losing herself, gives without diminishing her essence, and reminds every man who meets her that true love is not comfort. It's initiation. When a man finally stands before the shadow bride, something ancient stirs within him. His rational mind, once the proud architect of his world, begins to fracture under the weight of her gaze. She does not attack him. She reveals him. Every mask, every carefully constructed identity he has built to protect himself begins to crumble, not because she demands it, but because her presence makes illusion unbearable. She does not need to expose him. He does that himself in her reflection. Jung said that every relationship is, in essence, a psychological experiment, a confrontation between two unconscious worlds. And the shadow bride embodies this confrontation in its purest form. She brings the man face to face with his repressed fears of inadequacy, his buried resentment toward the feminine, his longing to be accepted without earning it. She evokes in him what no other woman dares to touch, the wounded boy who still lives beneath the armor of a man. Her love feels dangerous because it asks for no control. She does not need to possess him to feel secure, and that terrifies him. Because most men equate love with ownership, with power, with the ability to predict, to contain. But in her presence, that illusion evaporates. She cannot be possessed because she does not even belong to herself in the old way. She belongs to something greater, the current of transformation that moves through her. You've seen it before, haven't you? The way a woman like this disarms a man without even trying. The way he looks at her with both reverence and suspicion, unable to decide if she's a blessing or a curse. She carries within her the paradox he has spent his life denying, that love and death are twins. To unite with her, he must die to the man he was. To truly love her, he must surrender the illusion of control and enter the chaotic, luminous field of emotional truth. And yet, she is not here to destroy him. She is here to birth him. But birth is never gentle. It is the tearing apart of what was, to make way for what must be. That is the essence of the sacred feminine, the power to dissolve illusion through love so raw it resurrects. Still, many men cannot bear this. Their fear disguises itself as judgment. She's too intense. She's too emotional. She's too much. They project their unintegrated shadow onto her, labeling her as manipulative, unstable, or dangerous, when in truth it is their own suppressed chaos they see. They confuse her emotional depth for volatility, her sensuality for temptation, her independence for threat. Because to stand before a woman who needs nothing from you forces you to question what you are offering. And yet, in the quiet corners of his psyche, he knows she is the only one who ever saw him. Not the performance, not the achievements, not the mask. Him, the raw, unedited truth of his being. She sees him not as a savior, but as a soul in process. And this recognition, this sacred witnessing, is what terrifies and heals him in equal measure. To the woman who becomes the shadow bride, this dance is not easy either. She learns through fire that love without self-possession becomes sacrifice. She has loved men who could not meet her, men who adored her light but fled from her depth. And in losing them, she discovered herself. She realized that her worth does not depend on whether someone stays. It depends on her ability to stay true to her essence. Her initiation is solitude, the descent into her own unconscious where she confronts the archetype of the abandoned woman, the rejected lover, the witch burned for her wisdom. In the silence of that descent, she finds her own authority. She no longer seeks validation in being chosen because she has chosen herself. Her energy shifts from longing to knowing. When she rises from that underworld, she carries a calm that can no longer be manipulated. She becomes magnetic not because she tries to attract, but because she radiates self-containment. Men sense it, the energy of a woman who no longer needs saving. To the weak, she is intimidating. To the strong, she is irresistible. You see, the shadow bride is not an external figure. She is an inner state of being. When a woman integrates her own shadow, she ceases to live as a reflection of others' desires. She becomes the mirror itself, neutral, luminous, unapologetically whole. And that's when everything changes. Men who once fled her intensity now return, drawn by something they cannot explain. They sense that she carries the missing key to their own evolution. But she has changed too. She no longer waits for them to understand her. Her love remains open, but her boundaries are divine. She knows now that her task is not to awaken every man she meets, but to remain awake herself, to embody the union within her, the marriage of light and dark, tenderness and power, intuition and reason. She has become the very thing he feared and longed for all along: wholeness. In the mythology of the psyche, the shadow bride is not a lover one finds, she is a force one becomes ready to face. When she appears in a man's life, it's not coincidence, it's timing. The moment his soul can no longer tolerate the half-life of repression, she manifests as an answer and a test. She is both mirror and threshold, and through her, he is asked the most terrifying question of all: are you willing to meet yourself? For centuries, men have worshipped the idea of woman as muse, angel, or comforter, yet avoided the archetype that burns through illusion. The shadow bride is the alchemical fire that purifies, not the gentle flame that warms. She does not dance around a man's ego. She dismantles it, one truth at a time. Every silence between them hums with meaning. Every word she speaks cuts through his defenses like a blade of light. But to her, this power is not a weapon. It is a responsibility, for she too once misunderstood her gift. In her unawakened form, she used intensity to control, passion to seduce, emotion to bind. She mistook chaos for power, drama for depth, and pain for proof of love. Until one day she faced the same mirror she had been to others, and saw her own shadow staring back. The manipulator, the pleaser, the savior, the one who confused attention with affection. That moment broke her. But it also liberated her, because she realized that being a shadow bride isn't about holding power over others. It's about holding light within darkness. She understood that her magnetism was never meant to dominate. It was meant to awaken. From that awareness, her energy softened without losing its strength. She began to love with presence, not possession. And when such a woman enters a man's world, she destabilizes the false peace he's built on control. Suddenly, the mask of stoicism he wears, the one that makes him look composed but hides his fear of vulnerability, begins to crack. She senses his pain, not because she wants to fix it, but because she has known her own. She recognizes the language of avoidance, the way he turns jokes into shields, the way he intellectualizes his wounds to escape feeling them. Her silence becomes unbearable to him because it reflects his inner noise. Her eyes, calm yet piercing, strip away the excuses. She doesn't accuse, she doesn't plead, she simply sees. And that seeing dismantles him more completely than any argument ever could. This is where many men retreat. They will accuse her of wanting too much, of being too complex, of breaking what was fine. But the truth is, she never broke him. She only revealed the cracks that were already there. And for the rare man who stays, who chooses not to run but to feel, A transformation begins. Slowly, he starts to understand that his avoidance of her was not fear of her power, but fear of his own vulnerability. Her presence shows him that strength is not stoicism, it is surrender. To love her is to descend into the unfamiliar terrain of emotion, to let himself be unmade so that something more real can emerge. In this descent, he meets his anima, the repressed feminine within him. He begins to understand that she was never out there in her, alone. She was always a reflection of what lived inside him, waiting to be integrated. Through her, he learns to listen, to feel, to soften, not as weakness, but as wholeness. You, who listens to this, know that this dance between man and shadow bride is not romantic in the ordinary sense. It is not about compatibility or chemistry. It is about evolution. The purpose of such a union is not happiness. It is awakening. And awakening, though luminous, is rarely comfortable. It burns through the illusions that have kept us safe, exposing the raw truth of what we are. When a woman embodies her shadow bride fully, she no longer sees men as saviors or enemies. She sees them as mirrors. Each interaction becomes a reflection of her own state of consciousness. She doesn't demand that he rise. She rises, and the world responds. Her serenity becomes her seduction. Her boundaries become her beauty. Her silence becomes her scripture. And when a man meets her in that place, without armor, without pretense, they experience a union beyond possession. It is not the meeting of two halves, but the recognition of two wholes. Their love ceases to be need. It becomes remembrance. He sees in her the feminine he had lost within himself. She sees in him the masculine that honors, not dominates. Together, they reflect the divine polarity that fuels creation itself. But such unions are rare because few are willing to walk through the fire it takes to reach them. The shadow bride does not promise comfort. She promises clarity, and clarity, once tasted, ruins all illusions of lesser love. Once a woman has known herself at that depth, she cannot go back to pretending. Once a man has seen himself through her, he cannot return to ignorance. What remains is a love that does not seek to own, only to witness. It breathes in truth, not dependency. It expands rather than confines. And in that sacred expansion, both learn the same lesson. Love was never about finding the right person. It was about becoming the right mirror. As time passes, the shadow bride evolves from a myth into a state of being that reshapes both man and woman alike. Her presence marks the death of unconscious love, the kind that clings, idealizes, and demands constant reassurance. What emerges in its place is something far rarer, a love that breathes with awareness, where both stand not as captors of each other's souls, but as keepers of truth. For the woman, this awakening is a slow unfurling. She begins to see how much of her love, in the past, was survival disguised as devotion. How often she confused attachment with connection and sacrifice with virtue. She remembers the girl who once begged for love, thinking that being needed was the same as being valued. That girl died the moment she realized that to be chosen for your weakness is not love, it's dependency. And in her place stands a woman who now embodies her own authority. The shadow bride is no longer a concept to her. She is the integration of all that was once divided within. Her shadow no longer hides behind shame or denial. It walks beside her, dignified and known. Her anger is not poison, it's boundary. Her vulnerability is not fragility, it's access to truth. Her sensuality is not manipulation, it's presence in the body, fully alive. Such a woman can no longer be seduced by superficial promises, because she knows how to create her own safety. Her energy carries the frequency of someone who has seen herself naked, not in body, but in essence, and did not turn away. The confidence she exudes doesn't come from appearance or praise, but from the knowledge that she can lose everything external and still remain whole. And the man who meets her now must meet himself first. He cannot enter her field with the old tactics, charm, control, power, because those vibrations no longer register in her world. The shadow bride doesn't respond to egoic pursuit. She responds to depth, presence, and emotional courage. The man who reaches her heart must first descend into his own, where his projections dissolve and his truth begins. When he does, something miraculous happens. The old power struggle collapses. The masculine no longer tries to dominate the feminine, and the feminine no longer tries to heal the masculine. They begin to recognize the sacred geometry of their polarity, not as competition, but as complementarity. The man protects her not because she is weak, but because she is sacred. She nurtures him not because he is lost, but because he is becoming. You see, in this union, there is no longer a hierarchy, there is rhythm. The masculine becomes the structure that allows the feminine to flow, and the feminine becomes the breath that keeps the structure alive. Together they are the dance of Shiva and Shakti, Logos and Eros, consciousness and life. Neither superior, neither submissive, both surrendered to the same divine movement. But this is not a fairy tale. It requires both to die many, small deaths, the death of pride, of illusion, of emotional cowardice. It requires the woman to release her addiction to potential and the man to abandon his fear of intimacy. It demands from both an honesty that strips away every romantic fantasy. Because the shadow bride is not a fantasy. She is the end of fantasy. She is the end of pretending that love should always feel safe. The end of believing that passion must mean possession. The end of giving pieces of oneself just to keep another from leaving. She is the beginning of a deeper intimacy, one that thrives on truth, not performance, and yet she is also compassion. She does not hold anger for those who ran from her, nor bitterness for those who feared her. For she understands now. She was never rejected. She was revealed too soon. A man can only meet her as deeply as he has met himself. To expect otherwise is to betray the wisdom of timing. So she lets them go, not as loss, but as release. Each departure becomes a rite of purification, a clearing of space for something more aligned. Her solitude no longer aches. It vibrates. She knows that loneliness is not emptiness, but expansion. The universe preparing her for a higher frequency of love. If you listen closely, you can almost hear her soul whisper through the silence. I am not waiting. I am becoming. And somewhere far from her presence, a man feels the echo of that whisper in his own heart. He cannot name it, but he feels it. The pull toward something real, something terrifyingly pure. It is the call of the shadow bride, summoning him toward the marriage of his own soul. Whether he answers or not will define his life, because to unite with her, truly, deeply, consciously, is to awaken, and awakening demands everything. When the shadow bride finally stands in her full radiance, she is no longer seeking the sacred union outside of herself. She has already lived it within. The battle between her light and dark, her desire and discipline, her tenderness and power, has ended not in the triumph of one, but in their embrace. She has become the vessel through which opposites reconcile. The sacred marriage has already taken place in her soul, and from that inner union, her presence transforms everything she touches. She no longer seduces. She summons. Not through words, but through energy, the kind that speaks directly to the unconscious, awakening those ready to remember who they are. Her aura is no longer defined by longing. It is defined by embodiment. She has learned that real magnetism is not performance, but peace. Men feel this peace like a pulse beneath the surface. To some, it is too still, too silent, too vast. To others, it is the first true thing they've ever encountered. For this kind of woman cannot be conquered. She does not orbit another's gravity, she is the gravity. Her love does not inflate a man's ego, it summons his essence, and he will either rise to meet her or retreat back into the comfort of illusion. But for the one who rises, for the man who has faced his shadow and befriended it, the union becomes something luminous. He no longer fears her mystery, he reveres it. He no longer tries to decode her moods, he dances with them. In her chaos, he finds creation. In his steadiness, she finds freedom. Together, they learn that love was never meant to be a battle of control, but an alchemy of surrender. And she, the shadow bride, recognizes him not by the way he looks at her, but by the way he listens. His gaze doesn't consume, it beholds. His touch doesn't claim, it connects. His love doesn't promise forever, it promises presence. In that presence, time itself dissolves. The relationship is no longer about security, but about truth. Each moment becomes an offering to the divine, a small death of ego, a rebirth of soul. Yet the true climax of her journey is not the meeting of another, but the return to herself. The most sacred marriage is always internal, the reconciliation between who she was told to be and who she truly is. She no longer fragments her being to be understood. She no longer hides her intuition behind logic or her softness behind armor. She walks now as a paradox in motion, grounded yet ethereal, fierce yet forgiving, sensual yet spiritual. She has become the embodiment of what Jung called individuation, the integration of the unconscious into the conscious, the union of the self with the soul. Her life no longer revolves around being desired, it revolves around being aligned. Every choice she makes flows from an inner knowing untouched by fear. She doesn't chase meaning, she emanates it. And this is what the world misunderstands about such women. They are not dangerous because they tempt. They are dangerous because they reveal. They strip the world of illusion simply by existing authentically. They are reminders that truth has a pulse, that love is not transaction but transformation. In her stillness lies rebellion. In her gentleness, power. In her silence, sermons. She has walked through the valley of rejection, abandonment, and misunderstanding, and has emerged not bitter, but luminous. She no longer asks, "Who will love me as I am?" She asks, "Who dares to meet me where I stand?" The shadow bride is not fantasy. She is initiation. She is every woman who has been shamed for her intensity, feared for her depth, silenced for her wisdom, and chose to keep loving anyway. Her existence is proof that darkness is not the enemy of light, but its cradle, and that every heartbreak, every betrayal, every descent into the unknown was never punishment. It was preparation. Now, she no longer lives for love. She lives as love. She no longer yearns to be seen. She sees. Her energy moves through the world like quiet thunder, reshaping everything without demanding recognition. Men who encounter her sense it instantly. She is the mirror they can't escape, the silence that makes them question who they are when the performance ends. And to you who listen, understand this. She is not waiting for you to understand her. She is already whole. Her love is no longer a cry for union. It is a declaration of completion. To meet her is to remember that everything you chase outside of yourself already lives within. Because in the end, the shadow bride is not about romance. She is about remembrance of the sacred balance between light and dark, giving and receiving, becoming and being. The man who recognizes her does not capture her. He honors her, and together they become not two halves made whole, but two worlds made free. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.